How are you, mate? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm pretty lazy. I'm having a duvet day. Well, not quite a duvet day, but I've pulled the drawbridge up today because
I've
I'm
done the
kind of
same. I was cleaning.
I'm
Larissa was coming. Larissa was saying, "No, just spin it off. I'll cook some food. We'll just have a lazy
yeah.
day today. There's snow, so that's it. Let's just sack it." So we did a
Yeah,
little video montage of going shopping today in the snow in Ukraine, which was quite nice. But
wonderful.
apart
I
from that,
really
yeah,
liked I really liked the video that you sent me yesterday. I think you just posted it for the first time yesterday about it's basically showing you know Ukraine is far from losing and Russia is far from winning. But I
oh,
think
absolutely, yeah.
it's a huge challenge in the media here in the way it's reported, which unfortunately leads into ultimately long-term support for Ukraine. And we need to try and get the message across to people that Ukraine is doing an awful lot better than um, a lot of people might suspect. It's not just about what's going on the front lines. It's about what is going on increasingly behind the front lines and how Ukraine is increasingly hitting elements of, let's call it Russia's logistics chain, in particular their petroleum industry, where I mean, you know, it was over 2 months ago now that Russia started to import petroleum for the first time.
Yeah,
We know
yeah,
that
yeah.
we know there are huge pressures on the Russian economy, much of it down to the successes which Ukraine is having. You know, so I've been in a very pensive mood. I don't think it's putting it too mildly to say I've been bordering on depressed with the news out of
Mm,
Ukraine and
much so.
the news from the so-called peace talks between Trump, Putin, Zelensky on the sidelines, let us say. I
Yeah,
think Zelensky is doing only what he can do. I think
absolutely.
his patience is
Do you
I think
not
his
find it
patience is
extremely odd that the loudest people calling for elections are Russians and Americans? And when you go out
of
to the
course.
streets and you speak to Ukrainians, they're like, well, we can't have elections because we got 6 million people in the occupied territories. We've got how many? 6 to 9 million that have left the country who are dotted all around the place. We've got people, POWs.
Yeah.
We've got, those fighting on the front lines holding back the aggressor who said that they're going to take part in the security of the elections. Hold on a minute. What? you know, so I'm just sitting there like you, just depressed, going, look, everything I've said over the last 12 months has panned out. I'm just going to get brave and start putting it on YouTube now, just saying how I feel. Those security guarantees I was putting last week saying they're not worth a tuppenny, to be honest, to put it bluntly. You and I know, but
I
all the
agree.
foreign guests might not understand. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's not worth the paper it's written on. And we've just seen it in the last, 24 hours, where Putin has just fabricated an attack. And
Right.
Putin told me, well, how can you trust a country if Putin just told you there's an attack that's never happened? How are you going to guarantee any security guarantees? I mean,
So,
it's what we all wanted to hear here. It's just not worth the paper it's written on.
Colin, the problem with talking to you is you start saying something and I decide what I want to say. And by the time you finish speaking, there's about six things that I want to say. Look, one of them is obviously Russia lies on an industrial scale. And that was a soundbite that I'm very proud to say that I helped coin with Pavlo Klimkin when he was foreign minister, and I worked for him as his communication advisor back between 2016 and 2018. And the reason why we said that was it was so stark to say that the leader of a major country, you know, or that a country lied on an industrial scale. And you know, I remember in a diplomatic meeting, French and German diplomats at the time saying that we couldn't possibly use such language because it would upset the Russians because we needed to keep speaking to them. That was in Vilnius in early 2018, and you know we've seen that sort of that sort of attitude and that sort of appeasement of Russia retreat very, very slowly. Um, but at the moment, I've done a few interviews over the Christmas period, and in one, I said, you know, you lot in the media have been incontinent when it comes to hailing peace processes. You know, it's long, long past time that we did. Let me try something for a moment. Let's just focus on the reality of where we are in the world at the moment and relations between Russia, Ukraine, Europe, and the United States. The United States used to be the leader of the free world. They are no longer that. It's not that they are no longer a reliable
No.
security partner. The world has changed, and it seems like an awful lot of commentators and leaders are still blinking and thinking, well, could it really have changed? I don't know how much our leaders really realize. I know there is still a need for a certain amount of diplomatic speak, but you know, these current peace talks are clearly, I don't believe they will lead anywhere because don't believe that Zelensky will manage to get an agreement with Trump that will be anyway acceptable to either Zelensky or, more importantly, the Ukrainian people. Um, Secondly, I mean, the very fact, I mean, a couple of things that I noted in the last few days on that infamous trip to, was it Alaska with
Mm.
Putin? And the plane landing and the full red carpet treatment, and Trump there to meet him, and Trump standing on the end of the red carpet, clapping him. When Zelensky arrived in Florida, the Sunday just passed, not a single senior cabinet official, let alone President Trump, was there to meet him. Now, I've been told there were protocol people and so forth, but I think that speaks volumes. The fact that Trump had a 2 hour telephone conversation before he met Zelensky with Putin,
Yeah.
the further telephone conversation after he met with Zelensky probably is another point that tells us everything we want to know. But let's go back. Let's go back to the original 28 point so-called peace plan. Was it 6 weeks ago now? And at the
Mm.
time, even before the evidence came out that it was actually originally written in Russian, I said in an interview or in a podcast, I think, that this was written in the Kremlin and translated into English in the White House. It was a capitulation document.
It referred to
And
things like the Nazi regime. And I mean, that's not
that's right.
something America would sort of, or historically has sort of referred Ukraine as. So it was definitely an indicator, just things like that.
Well, look, let's just stop on Nazi regime at the moment because what I'm seeing, and I'm hearing some fairly senior media commentators here still parroting those key Russian lies that were used to justify the invasion. And one is it was all about Ukraine not joining NATO, and it was all about allowing Ukraine to join the EU. We know that it was nothing to do with this. And
Mm.
we should remind, I think you and I are on the same page here, but to remind anybody who needs to be reminded who's listening in, there were two reasons and two reasons only that Putin invaded Ukraine first in 2014 and further invaded in 2022. One was, the catalyst was very much the Maidan Revolution. But let's remember what the catalyst for the Maidan Revolution was. And talking about disinformation, no, spoiler alert, it was not a US backed coup. The entire US security services don't have the ability to magically bring 1.5 million people onto the streets overnight and to keep them there um, for, oh, what was it, over 100
Yeah.
days. The reason why that happened was because a extremely cruel and corrupt and pro-Moscow dictator in Yanukovych, decided by himself at the last moment that he was not going to sign an association agreement with the European Union, which was clearly what the Ukrainian people wanted, which was going to take Ukraine more into the Western orbit, and instead to sign, and this decision was made, correct me if I'm wrong, at a conference in Vilnius in Lithuania towards the end of the year, and decided at the same time to sign a economic agreement which would drag Ukraine further back into the orbit of Russia, the Russian Empire. The response to that was a peaceful student protest camped out on the Maidan for 7 days, which was eventually broken up very brutally by the Berkut. The riot police since disbanded. I've heard stories that in certain cases they exchanged their batons for iron bars. What so many people said to me in Ukraine, so many people that I've lost count, is the one thing you don't do in Ukraine is you don't touch our children. And you correct me on the numbers, but within days there was over 1 million people on the
Mm.
Maidan and on the streets of Kyiv in what I still think, notwithstanding what's going on in Georgia at the moment, certainly one of the great popular revolutions of the 21st century in Europe. And it was people, remember, flying the Ukrainian flag beside the EU flag. There's no
Mm.
secret service on earth was capable of manufacturing that, as the Russian Trump goes, and certainly Victoria Nuland, I think, appearing on the Maidan for maybe 45
And
minutes
the
and
magic
handing out
cookies.
handing out cookies.
I remember
You
hearing
know,
it for the first time and somebody saying, "Oh, it's all her and the cookies," and I was like, "What? What
yeah,
cookies are you on about?" I remember
right.
it's like a dumb
That's right.
Brit who's coming in for the first time, going, What do you
Yeah.
mean? What cookies are you on about?"
I don't know whether you were on the Maidan, Sean. I wasn't, but I've
No,
spoken,
I
and I'm
wasn't. I
sure,
was a bit before me.
no, but I'm sure, like me, you've spoken to hundreds of people who were, and
Actually,
you have
while you're on the
many, you have
subject,
many
my
dear
first
friends who,
commander was a policeman at Maidan, who left, who wouldn't fire on the protesters, and was then afterwards banned and sent to Kharkiv, which we would say in Britain, sent to Coventry. It's
yes, yeah,
literally he was sent away because he wouldn't, and they were offering him. He said about 10, 12,000 hryvnia to shoot at protesters, and he just said, "I'm not happy with that." And so that was my real. I had such a first induction into Maidan in Ukraine, just with my first real commander here, who's just happened to be a policeman at the time. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's quite a bit
no,
of a
you
story.
didn't, because I was a little bit of a, I went on about my Dan, and just to remind, because one of the things I've learned, especially in the last 4 years since I've been heavily involved in doing media work to try and help illuminate what's going on in the war, in Russia's war against Ukraine, and to try and bring some truth to it, and to try and combat the great wave of Russian disinformation that's out there. One of the things that's become very, very clear to me is how quickly people forget, how short the memories of many people are. And while people will remember these sound bites like Maidan was a US-backed coup, or Ukraine is full of Nazis,
Mm,
or it was because of NATO expansion, and silly phrases like poking the bear, and fighting Russia till the last Ukrainian. Well, it's the Ukrainians will decide. Fight Russia till the last Ukrainian, not the
mm.
Europeans. But I was just going to say there were two reasons, and two reasons only, why Russia invaded. And the Maidan Revolution, where they toppled and sent into exile in Russia Yanukovych, was a
Well, he
catalyst to
fled, didn't
that.
he?
Yes. But that was a catalyst to that, because the greatest single threat, this showed real evidence of a people who thirsted for democracy and freedom. And as you know,
Yeah.
the word freedom has a resonance and a meaning in Ukraine that
Mm.
most of us in the West have forgotten about. I always think of,
Oh,
I don't know
absolutely.
if it's still there or not, that my favorite mural on the Maidan of chains breaking and freedom is my religion. But
Mm.
when I went over to Ukraine, the thing that everybody talked to me about was freedom. And people seem to have a concept and an appreciation of freedom that we didn't have in the West anymore. We took freedom for granted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
But also not only that, what Ukraine has proven is that they know the price of freedom, and freedom is not free. But more than anything else, and you're part of this, my friend, Ukrainians are willing to pay that price.
Yeah.
That's what we have lost, and we need to regain very, very fast because we need to waken out of our slumber because we don't, we cannot be complacent. We cannot be complacent any longer. There was a speech by, I always try to get her name correct. It's a fantastic name. Blaise Metroelli. She's the current head of MI6.
What a cool
And isn't
MI6
it?
sort of name, isn't she? It's brilliant.
15 days ago, 2 weeks ago yesterday, he
Yeah.
made a absolutely stunning speech in which he outlined the threat that we are under from Russia at the moment and how soon we may all in Europe have to face Russia in a war. And this was only echoing what has been said, certainly for the last year, by heads of our armed forces, former heads of our armed forces, people who you and I know who
Mm.
have a background. And it's and of course there was a leak from US intelligence only 2 weeks ago, and a piece in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was, where they're very, very clearly, despite what their president is saying, and despite what Putin is telling him to say, that Russia's war aims in Ukraine are unchanged. Now, Sean,
Yeah.
you and I have always known that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Seen it
know,
from the rooftops.
Russia, as a great friend of mine told me back in 2016, a Ukrainian friend, Russia wants Ukraine without Ukrainians. And
It
if that
does,
hasn't
yeah.
been proven to the world over the last 4 years, but I keep going off on a thing. Two reasons, and people need to get this, the two reasons that Russia invaded Ukraine. One, the Maidan Revolution, the Revolution of Dignity in 2013, 2014, proved that this was a country where the people, not its leaders, where the people yearned for freedom and democracy, and the sort of lifestyle and the improvement in life that that could bring. And that on Russia's doorstep was the greatest single threat to the kleptocratic mafia-based regime in the Kremlin. So that was the first. That was the first reason for invasion. That had to be snuffed out because that was simply and remains simply too dangerous. Because remember, the one thing that Putin fears more than anything else is the Russian people. And he's
It does.
probably wearing out the patience of the Russian people at the moment
I think
because
so.
the Russian people demand victory, and it's going to be increasingly hard despite the lies and despite the support of Donald Trump for Putin to and convince the Russian people that losing 1.2 million casualties in the last 4 years, coming up to 4 years, only taking 20% of Ukraine in 12 years nearly since
In
the
12 years.
invasion.
Two
In
less
12
than
years,
2%. Less than 2%
less
since
than one, well,
2022. Yeah.
since 2022, yes. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
going to say in the last year where the Russians are claiming great advances, they have still taken less than 1% of Ukrainian land. And that has been at a cost of thousands, sometimes as many as 2,000 casualties a day, either killed or seriously wounded.
Any head of state with that misery and that poor record would have got the
Yeah,
sack in the UK or in
yeah,
Europe by now.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's a total failure. And how
yeah.
I think Putin's really struggling now, more so than ever. And you alluded to the video I sent last night. I wanted to allude to the fact that actually Russia's defended everything now all of the time. That wasn't like that
Can
in
we, Sean, can we
2022.
come back to that video in a
Yeah,
moment?
of
Because
course. Yeah.
I would like you to talk about that video because it's so important. But just to finish off what I said, I need to be sharper. Two reasons. One, a free, democratic, thriving Ukraine on its doorstep is the biggest threat to Putin and
Oh,
his
absolutely.
and his cronies in the Kremlin. But the second reason, it's not Ukraine is full of Nazis. It's not. civil war against a Russian-speaking minority, and you can talk about that, and
Well, he's
it's
killed
not.
most of the villages and the cities
That's right.
between
That's
Russia
right.
and here.
This
So yeah, I mean it's
this is an
barbaric.
old-fashioned. This is an old-fashioned 19th century war of conquest,
Mm,
going against the rules-based order that pertains since the last 80 years, I guess, since 1945, that says actually you can't just march into another country and take what you want.
yeah.
And I always say, and I've been saying this for 4 years, although Ukraine was only one of 15 Soviet socialist republics, I believe that it accounted for up to 40% of industrial output of the Soviet Union. It was
It was their
obviously the
R&D center,
breadbasket.
wasn't it? We talked about it before. It
Yeah,
was their
we
R&D
did.
center.
It was their R&D centers where their rocket scientists were. In fact,
Yeah.
the foreign minister I worked for, Pavlo Klimkin, was a rocket scientist before he became a diplomat. So two reasons: one, free democratic Ukraine too much of a threat; two, just greed. They want to, and as my friend told me in 2016, Putin wants Ukraine without Ukrainians.
Mm,
Now, we need to listen to him because he has told us this. He has told us that he doesn't believe that Ukraine is a real country, and that they should. And we have, was it Rybakov, um,
Actually, I'm
the
going to put in a
deputy
clip now.
foreign
I'm
minister?
going to put in a clip now. Well, you've just said that with Putin in 2002 actually acknowledging that Ukraine is a sovereign country. I've just seen it today, and I'm going to put that in that clip. Now you've just mentioned that, actually. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's a quite
No,
poignant point
that's
because he's
fine. I
actually
was
gone from recognizing it as a sovereign country to now just, it's full of Nazis. I don't recognize it, and it's got a Nazi regime.
yeah. But I was also going to quote Rybakov, who is the deputy foreign minister of Russia, less than a week ago, who effectively said, "We will have, we will have Ukraine on our terms, or there will be no Ukraine." And that reflects very much what my friend told me almost 10 years
Mm,
ago. They want Ukraine without Ukrainians. And you know that they are willing to torture, murder, rape, kidnap,
ethnically cleanse.
whatever, ethnically cleanse, whatever it takes to intimidate people and to wipe out. We know that in the occupied territories, it's very, very hard to maintain your Ukrainian
Yeah.
identity anymore. We know what they're doing. We know that they are bringing in Russian exports into Crimea, into Mariupol, and into other places of occupied Ukraine. So this is genocide. It's genocide and it has been from the start. And nobody is better placed to bear witness to this because you saw what happened in Mariupol. You were part of it. You
Mm,
fought for it. It is genocide, and if anybody wants to look up the United Nations Convention on
it is.
Genocide, of which there are 5 tests, and read each of those tests very, very carefully. You will see that Russia has been, and if you don't believe me, I would refer you to great American professor Timothy Snyder out of Yale University, who has done a lot of work this again from the early days, not today or yesterday. So, we have genocide being carried out in a democratic European country since 2022, arguably since before that, but certainly since the full-scale invasion in February of 22. This took off completely. Look, go to your clip, and then I want to come back and I want to say a little bit about America's changing position in the world, because I think an awful lot of people are still blinking into this and not realizing exactly. So let's just hold that thought. But in the meantime, Sean, over to you, and then maybe a few thoughts from you, I would suggest, on the video that you put out yesterday. How's that for a progress?
That's fine. No, I mean it's all linked into what you're saying. I mean, I get literally the idea is that we're trying to get to America in spring to take survivors over to America. It's harder than you think because the American media likes Americans on their media, not Ukrainians talking to Americans, telling them, actually, no, you're wrong. So we're trying to push and get Ukrainians onto American media. And part of that is putting these clips out just to really show. Actually, with one American said to me last week, oh, you're the guy from Ukraine. You're losing, and I was like, no, actually no, you know. So we're actually their media is telling them that we're failing, we're losing, and that we're reliant on Trump. When actually that's not the case. We're holding our own. The situation's changed. There's been a power shift. Putin's struggling. Hasn't moved really very far since 2023. Still stuck in not even taking Donetsk Oblast. He's lost dominance of the Black Sea. He's got 1.2 million casualties, as you alluded to earlier. He's struggling, and now he's defending everything all of the time. This is a Russia that's never ever been under this much pressure. Yet there's no pressure in the media on him. There's no pressure
Let
about the economy. It's stopped. There's no Trump's now coming to his aid because he can see him in trouble, which is my opinion. So I think that's where we went out to put the video out to really sort of explain that actually things have really changed this year for Ukraine. It's not all bad, and we are actually winning in a lot of areas.
but I say one thing before you play the clip on the media in the United States. And again, for anybody who's not aware of it, I would commend you to an organization called Reporters Without Borders, who do an annual audit of freedom of the press. And it's quite easy to find online. And the 2025, what we've seen in recent years is a steady falling down the ranking of the United States. Countries like the Nordic and Baltic countries and Ireland and Britain language is down around 20th at the moment. We have issues here, but it's still top 20. America has fallen to 57th and is continuing to decline. We hear reports out of the United States that programs that don't unquestionably support the president or that make fun of the president may well lose their license,
I'm glad
may
you
well
brought
be
it
taken
up.
off the air.
It's one of the
You know,
banes of
so
my everything I'm saying at the moment. I mean, you only have to see Americans doing that at the moment.
yeah.
With
And I
even
was
my
reading.
5 years of history, they want to go through my media.
That's right.
I mean,
Well,
it's just
exactly. So I certainly shan't be entering America anytime soon because on the basis of that, I would expect to be refused entry because I've said
I'm
more
going to
than a
get
few
refused
unkind
entry just
things.
because of my JD Vance memes
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I've got
Well,
stored on my
probably.
phone.
And JD Vance is the guy who came almost a year ago to the Munich Security Conference and lectured Europe on freedom of speech. All
It's bizarre.
The European countries are generally the countries he was lecturing are all in the top 20 of the annual audit. And this is a body which is highly respected. Well, America's 57 and falling fast, and it will be interesting to see where they are next year because I heard another report that it is increasingly hard to make a living as a journalist in the United States
Absolutely. I mean,
because
he's
there's
going
the
after them all, isn't
media
he?
the
He's
media
suing
is
them all.
being the media is being decimated unless you are on the side of the regime. When did we start talking about a regime in the White House? I think it's time to start talking about a regime in the
I
White House.
think so,
Anyway,
yeah.
back to you, because I've got other things that I want to say about the place of America in the world at the moment.
No, I'm
So
I'm
over
with
to you.
you. I see the links, and there you've got people, MAGA pushing the free speech, and all Britons are getting jailed for social media posts, which is not entirely true. There's a lot of fake stuff. X doesn't even regulate its own policies. I have been through an exercise this last 2 weeks, putting together all the reports, the death threats I've had, the abuse I've had, the violent threats I've had, and all of them have just got rejected. You can block them. We don't see a problem with our policy. Generally, you have to fight to get somebody could call me a Nazi and that they're going to kill me and I should have been shot. And if I go back, I'm going to be, going to get the same treatment. I can report that and it gets nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And the difference is now I'm seeing more of a vocal side. Well, it's my free speech. That's not free speech. That's nothing.
So
It's
free
not
speech. Two
fucking
things.
free
Two things.
speech.
Sean, two important things. And I sat down, had lunch with some friends recently who are around my age. And, I graduated from university 40 years ago. I said, what do you retain? that you learned at university 40 years ago. They didn't seem to think it was very much. There's a few things that I learned. The first thing was there is no such thing as absolute freedom, because when you have absolute freedom, everyone's freedom impinges on the freedom of somebody else. That's why we have a civil society. That's why we have some sort of equality in our societies. But
Yeah.
libertarianism, which is what is at the heart of this current Trump administration and people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, the massively powerful tech bros, this is about libertarianism, which is maximum freedom, which is very easy to sell to the masses. But when you give everybody maximum freedom, actually, it's only a very, very small number of people real freedom, and it constricts or restrains the freedom which other people have. So, when I when I was studying, we considered that the media was the fourth pillar of democracy. It was the fourth estate, as it used to be called in revolutionary France. And I still give master classes on dealing with the media, and I talk very idealistically about the media and about journalism being an honorable profession, and a profession that has a code of ethics. The job of a journalist being to shine a light in dark corners, hold the powerful to account. Now,
Ethics.
what we are seeing increasingly is somewhere like the United States, the media is being prevented from doing that job, and the media, in terms of platforms that influence people's thinking, inform people, are being replaced very, very fast by platforms like Elon Musk's. And we both can tell our own stories on that. That's particularly dangerous. That's dangerous for democracy, because a free press, and remember, it's the United States and the evidence is out there, it's not opinion. Free press is an important part of democracy. And the United States that lectures us in Europe about freedom is far, far lower down the freedom of the press and freedom of expression than they are. So there's something very dangerous. There's something very dangerous afoot
Oh,
there.
it's extremely dangerous. I think very dangerous when you've got people like Graham Phillips calling himself a journalist, and
Uh-huh.
he's filming dead Ukrainian soldiers being eaten by pigs and interrogating people like Aidan Aslin, who was in captivity with me. You start you're not a journalist, dude. You're a propagandist fighting for a foreign
Mm,
state.
mm,
You're just doing the
mm.
media arm for it. You've crossed some boundaries there, and I think that's where essentially we need to start recognizing that America's going through its own problems with tenant media and RT paying people there to promote Russian agenda. You've got Nathan Gill in UK who's just been charged with bribery from the Reform Party for accepting money
Sent to
for
prison for 10 years.
10 years for taking bribes to give pro-Russian statements in the European Parliament. Brexit is starting to look like it was the best Russian success policy, success mission, intelligence mission that they've ever had. I mean, it's with all the same candidates that their parties being accused of taking bribes. So, it's just how far would have Russia got if Ukraine hadn't fought back. Now Ukraine's on the front lines fighting it. So there are some good things. I mean, this war has uncovered all those Russian assets that were normally below the radar. Just sort of under you know they avoided openness. We couldn't tell whether they weren't, and now coming out of the shell, pro-Russian agenda. I mean, their security services can't get into Europe and the UK anymore because they've been identified and pinged and banned and sent back to Russia. So, the whole war, my point of the video was to tell that when you read in the press that the war is a stalemate, it's anything but. It's just started to evolve. It's taken 4 years to really get Russia in a position where it's now struggling. Ukraine's been fighting the same way for quite a considerable amount of time. We still need support from the partners, but we're in a new era for Russia, who's now getting bombed 600 drones a day, ballistics coming in from Ukraine into Russia, hitting their infrastructure, recycling plants, ammunition dumps, command nodes. I mean, they're hitting the Black Sea Fleet, the Shadow Fleet, they're hitting different continents, different seas, and then we've had our fourth general in Moscow assassinated, since February 2022. That's not excluding the ones they've already lost in theatre. So, Russia's now experiencing, after 4 years, what Ukraine's been experiencing since day one, and war's now coming to Russia. My personal feeling is that, if Russia economic situation collapses to a point, we could end up walking back into the occupied territories without a shot being fired. And we're at that point. And I think Trump's open intervention now, his clear Russian-sided comments at the weekend, just really show Putin's desperation. And now they're trying to cash in. They're trying to get Trump on board to give up territory in Ukraine because they can't take it militarily. For me, that's a good sign that we should carry on, not give up. And I think Zelensky's, like you touched on earlier, Zelensky's playing a very political game here. He can't just turn around and say, no, we're not doing it. He's got to go through the motions. He has to, entertain Trump to a certain degree, because inevitably Putin's just going to say no. He doesn't want to, like we said earlier. He wants Kiev. He's always wanted Kiev, and he's not going to
Let's have
accept
a
anything
reality.
less.
Let's stop there and have a reality check at the moment for where the United States actually is. Because people our leaders are slow learners. And because our leaders are slow learners and we're not getting the communication leadership to our people, most of them are slow learners as well, right? And there's a document which got a little bit of coverage, but not enough. It's out there in the public domain, the new American National Security Strategy,
Mm,
published about a month ago. Now,
good
it only
point.
gives 2 pages out of about 37 to Europe. But what it says, there's a number of things which come out in that, and also in a restricted document which was leaked to the press. A number of things which come out in that. One is the desire to replace the current G7 with what they call a core five. Now, that core five in the aspiration of the new security strategy would be the United States, of course, Russia, China, India, and Japan. I'm not clear how Japan would fit into that. I would have hoped that Japan might be one of our friends that would fall down on our side. But interestingly,
I think they
I
are at the moment,
guess,
actually.
yeah. But interestingly, there is no place in that core five, and this would effectively replace the G7. There's no place in that core five for Europe or for any of the European countries. Furthermore, this document makes very, very clear the antipathy of the United States towards Europe, because we know Trump and his people hate Europe, because Europe united can stand up to Trump,
Mm.
it can stand up to Russia, it can stand up to any force on earth. It's a trading bloc of, say, 500 million people. We have a combined GDP that's over 10 times the size of Russia. We have a population 4 times the size of Russia. Yeah, we are starting to rearm. We probably need to do it an awful lot faster.
Mm.
But there is lines in that where there is a clear statement that America will work with patriotic parties in European countries where they exist to, look to break up the European. Now, for patriotic, read far right, read Farage and Reform in the UK, read Marie Le Pen in France, read Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, read Orban in Hungary, read Alternative for Deutschland in Germany. Remember when J.D. Vance came to the Munich Security Conference last February of earlier this year, and lectured Europeans on freedom of speech. After that speech, who did he go and see? He went and met with the leaders of Alternative for Deutschland. So this is very, very clear. There's also language where they talk about it being foreseeable that in years to come, there are certain NATO countries which will be dominated by non-Europeans. For non-European, read non-white. So the racist agenda here and the far right agenda is very, very clear, and it's all there in the public domain for people to read. So, you have an aspiration where you have a new world order. Donald Trump sees these immense opportunities to create wealth by trading with Russia and by using America's wealth to exploit, to do business deals and to exploit the vast resources of Russia, which, to be quite frank, the Russians are probably simply economically not capable of doing on their own. The European Union is something to be split up, divide and conquer. There
Mm.
isn't the strongest European country, whether it's Britain, France, or Germany, can't stand up to Russia or the United States or anybody else alone. The only way we can survive is to have a united Europe. And just imagine for a moment how much stronger Europe will be with Ukraine as a core member. Just imagine, the old NATO is gone because we don't have, and if it ever comes to the crunch, I will predict it now, America will not be there. There will be no Article
No.
5. There will be no Article 5 from America. So, we got to the term, the coalition of the willing, has been bandied around. We've heard all the fine words, one can only hope, and I'm not close enough to know how much reality there is behind it. I hear the fine words from Keir Starmer, from Macron,
Mm.
from Merz in particular. I'm encouraged by Merz,
Me
but
too, actually. Yeah.
but I don't have. But we need those European countries. Forget about the EU. Britain has got to be at the heart of Europe when it comes to defence. But also, we need our Canadian friends. We need, I would say, our Japanese friends and our South Korean friends, and we need our friends from New Zealand and Australia. And that's
Mm.
that's the group of liberal democracies that I see, because this is a move against liberal democracy. So, if you look at how these farcical so-called peace talks have gone, and the first thing is, huge kudos to President Zelensky for just having the patience of Job. And,
I
just
think I wrote on my social media.
yeah.
He's got my respect because he just hasn't punched Trump on the kisser.
Well,
I mean, Russia wants to, Ukraine to succeed. I mean,
yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, is he not the most dumbest man on the planet at the moment? It's like,
Well,
seriously?
I mean, he probably knows that Russia doesn't want Ukraine to succeed, but
No,
for his
absolutely.
own for his own reasons, he's actually saying this. But we need to finally wake up. America is not just not a reliable security partner anymore. America is now the enemy. Now, I absolutely agree that Zelensky
Well,
and
the
and,
Trump
and European
administration
leaders,
are, and those Trumpoids. I
yeah,
mean, there's a lot of support
yeah,
before we get America
yeah.
bashing here. There's a lot of support, and there was a lot of videos going out actually at the time with the streets lined with Ukrainian flags, American flags, all the way
I
up to
agree. I
Malaga.
agree with you. I agree with you
Yeah,
violently. And the most recent surveys that have come out actually have shown support for Ukraine is even higher among
yeah,
Republicans than it is
absolutely.
among Democrats. So one can only hope that the Trump MAGA experiment is going to come asunder from within,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we have got to remember, as crazy as we can say this guy is, or
They
corrupt,
did
or
elect him.
whatever you want to throw at him. Well, one, he was elected. That's 73 million Americans elected this
Yeah,
man for a second time. But let's not, as you said, let's not get onto America bashing.
yeah, yeah,
Let's talk about the Trump regime and the MAGA experiment, and the hard, frightening fact, and what keeps people like Zelensky and Starmer and Macron and Merz and others awake at night. Donald Trump has at his fingertips not only the most powerful military force on earth, the most powerful military force that has ever existed on the face of this earth. And that, unfortunately, is what our leaders need to deal with. So, Zelensky has a hard time. I mean, Zelensky needs to try and keep Trump in the game because, what are the chances when the final deal is simply something that Zelensky and the Ukrainian people cannot accept? Because, and we can talk, I think it's always worth talking about the specifics of the fortress belt and that 20%
Mm,
of Donetsk that Russia and Trump are demanding be relinquished, that they have not even managed to take, that they haven't managed to take in nearly 12 years of fighting since the invasion of Donbass in 2014. I think we should come on to that, but I'll let you talk about the importance of that. So, yes, that has forced Zelensky to come forward with this compromise proposal that Ukraine will pull back if Russia also pulls back. Spoiler alert: they won't agree to that,
nope.
and it will be some sort of a demilitarized economic zone. Be policed by whom and what are the security? We're told that Trump has given 15 years of security guarantees. We need to see the details on that. We have the Budapest Memorandum from 1994. That's the worth of American security details to date,
And
and we
it's
were
not
dealing
moved on
with,
from there. We're still the
yeah,
same place. Even talking about going to Budapest and doing it all over again for a 2.0. I mean, it's just it's
yeah.
ridiculous. But going on to the fortress belt, that fortress belt, I wouldn't expect the average person in America to really understand the importance of that. So when they watch the news, generally I worked out that they have no idea. It's just looking like Zelensky's not withdrawn and I'm giving them Donbass or Donetsk or anything like that. And that's certainly the Trump propaganda that's pushing it's Zelensky, it's Ukraine, they're not giving up. But what people don't understand is that, firstly, Russia can't take this militarily, and they've been doing this for 11 years with a full-scale invasion in 2022, and still can't take Donetsk or Blast even with help from Iran, China, Belarus, and North Korea. North Korean regulars are in country. We don't talk about that enough. That gets hushed over. But not to mention the fact that he's had help from Iranian drones, North Korean artillery, North Korean ballistics, North Korean regulars here. So, with all that, he's still not even taken Donetsk Oblast. He's making the propaganda is going up with such a big deal over places like Pokrovsk, which is Ukraine's 76th largest city, just to make it look like they've got a victory to keep going. The fact
They
is, they
still haven't taken it.
still haven't even taken it, even though they've announced it. And he invited journalists some 7 weeks ago to come and have a look around. Kupiansk, Zelensky was in there. They're now taking back the whole city from that was partially occupied by the Russians. It's going backwards. Russia's always been going backwards. They've lost 50% of what they initially gained in 2022. So going back to that, I don't expect an America to really understand the strategic importance of that area, but that is protecting pretty much the Russians from coming into Ukraine and has done since they invaded East Ukraine in 2014.
And
Now
I had a
he's at
quote.
such a bad point that he's now pushing Trump to try and get that for him. That's how bad Russia is doing. And the propaganda is trying to shield that embarrassment and that disaster of an invasion, which has cost so many Russian lives, let alone Ukrainians, to trying to shield that embarrassment from Putin. And that's the idea of the clip I put out last night, just to sort of say, we're not losing, guys. We're not winning,
No,
but
we're
we're not
not.
going to march
No,
in, but we're not losing.
don't, don't. We're not losing, but I'll tell you where we are losing. We're losing in the information war because
Mm.
that very propaganda that you're talking about is getting cut through. It is, it is influencing people. And I heard, I've listened to some stuff on the media here over the weekend in chat shows that, made my blood boil. And I was about to call in and I decided not to.
But this is where we push it through our appearances and our media and our YouTubes and our social. I mean, if you go on X, let's put it
But
put it in
but
comparison.
Sean, listen
Post
to
X. Sorry. You're going to put it on context. If you go on X, it looks like Russia's already won and beaten Ukraine twice over. You go on Blue Sky, not the same. You go on Substack, still not the same.
Yeah.
It is that X sort of pushing, that poison that's
But
opened up in the last 6 months.
which side is having the volume cut through? Which side is cutting through to
Well,
more
X is the
people?
war. People keep telling me they're moving away from X, and I'm like, don't move. We need you on X because that's
No,
where the
we can't.
fight is. That's where the
We
war
can't.
is.
We've got to stay with X.
Yeah,
We've
you
got
got
to
to
stay
stay
with
and
X.
push through
But
it.
look,
Yeah.
I mean, I sound that as a, I sound that as a warning, being somewhat pessimistic. I've said this for some time before. Look, I'm a little guy. You're a bit bigger than me, but we're still little guys working with our friends, trying to raise
Mm,
our voice. Now I know and you know that we tell the truth, but the truth isn't what matters anymore. It's the truth that people
mm,
manage to get across. And I just think, I was listening to Ukraine's deputy ambassador, UK, a couple of months ago. He had a figure of, I think it was 2.4 billion that the Kremlin spent on disinformation last year. We don't have a single, we don't have a single state control, to my knowledge. We don't have a single state controlled operation in the West to match that. It seems to be down to the integrity of our media and individual commentators like yourself and myself and people much
yeah,
bigger than
yeah, yeah,
us.
yeah.
I'm, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm trying to be realistic. I think we have an
Yeah,
awful
yeah,
lot further to go because exactly what you're saying is the the fortress belt. People do not. This is why I like to talk about it all the time. Just to put a bit of a cap on your explanation. I picked up a quote from Alexander Stubb, who's the
mm,
president of Finland, who
Finland.
said about plays golf with Donald Trump apparently. He said about a month and a half ago, talking of that 20-25% of Donetsk, he said it was the gateway to Kiev.
Mm,
It's the gateway to Kiev and
yeah,
the rest of Ukraine. And that's why the Russians want it, because we know that whatever agreement they may sign, they won't honor. We know this
no.
from experience. We know they negotiate in bad faith, and we know they never keep their word. And
Mm,
that's not opinion, that's just counting. From the Budapest
yeah,
Memorandum
yeah, yeah.
forward to the Helsinki Final Acts to various proclamations of recognizing Ukraine's territorial integrity and so forth. We know that they never keep their word. We know we have, as I've mentioned already, we have had, apart from many other sources, we know that their ambitions in Ukraine are still maximalist. It is to take
Mm,
over the whole country, and it is to wipe Ukrainian identity off the map. And with that, and I was saying this a month and a half before the full scale invasion went in. Remember my words. I said, this guy will have no compunction with killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians because he has done it in Aleppo and he has done it in Grozny. And that was exactly the quote that I kept bringing up. Well, Sean, you can tell us how he did it in Mariupol.
mm.
A Russian,
I,
a Russian, a
I'm with
Russian
you.
speaking city, and a
Yeah,
city
yeah,
where,
yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, the politics was probably, more favorable towards Russia than it was in parts of Ukraine further to the west.
Yeah.
There was no mercy shown. We know what an absolute minimum of 25,000 murdered. For
Mm,
context, the Nazis managed to murder 20,000 in 2 years. What was that 25,000? About 7 weeks.
yeah, yeah.
And
Women, women and children.
you and I know that it could be as high as 100,000.
Oh, easy. Yeah, yeah. It was packed still. People couldn't get
Certainly
out.
that's a report I saw coming out of the office of the mayor of Mariupol. And that's just
Yeah.
one, and that's just one, and that's just one city. So, we have, let me just finish on a word and then go back to yourself. Um, we have this utterly ridiculous comment which Donald Trump seems happy to parrot, that Putin has, you say, has good intentions towards Ukraine, wants Ukraine to succeed. So is this why he has invaded, killed tens of thousands of innocent people, caused close to $1 trillion worth of damage? wiped entire cities off the map. I have a friend who's a Ukrainian diplomat in The Hague. Every now and again, well, we keep in touch, but I say, what's the latest tally on the number of war crimes being investigated? It's always jumped massively. And the last time, a couple of weeks before Christmas, the figure had gone over 205,000 registered war crimes being investigated. They haven't got the capacity to,
No.
they're doing what they can to investigate these 200. And and we should remind people, the horrific, barbaric, cruel nature of those war crimes,
Mm.
of sexual violence, call it rape, call it torture, call it murder, call it abduction of children.
Not just military, civilians too. I was in prison with
Yeah,
civilians. So,
yeah, yeah,
it's just
yeah.
horrendous.
And so somebody who has done this to an innocent country who did nothing to be invaded apart from be there and be wanted and be a threat to Putin's regime because look, we're democratic and free. And hey, look, if you're democratic and free and if you work in this way, your life will be an awful lot better than it is for the more than 50% of Russians who can't even afford an inside toilet in their house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so, the message I really want to get across today is America is no longer an unreliable partner. America for now is lost and America is the enemy. Now, our leaders will do. I am not a diplomat anymore, and I was a one-time diplomat, so I don't have to use diplomatic language. I don't see that me using diplomatic language is going to be in any way
No, we don't
helpful,
want you to use diplomatic
right?
language
I
on here.
think
We want you to be you.
my job is to try and be honest and to try, as is yours, and to inform people. So our leaders will do what they can, and Godspeed to them, and they have my support and my best wishes, as has Starmer, as has Macron, as has President Zelensky. I couldn't do it. They must try. They must do what they can to keep America involved because
They have to,
yes, I'm
yeah.
told, I'm told we're arming up, but we need to do it. It's going to take time. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. And the one thing that I am consistently told by my senior military friends is the one thing that we cannot replace in Europe. The one thing we cannot replace in Europe is US intelligence for targeting and for knowing when attacks are coming in. And that is going to be, and we saw the last time when that was withdrawn, start of this year, 22 weeks, how costly it was. So I guess, President Zelensky has to try and keep America engaged. The naked reality as I see it, or the possibility is that may well be drawn, that may well be withdrawn at some stage. Guess it depends very much on, there is clearly within the Trump administration, there is a more pro-Ukrainian side, probably led by Rubio, right? But certainly J.D. Vance, Kushner, Witkoff, these
Yeah.
people are these people are out now Russian assets, and these are the
Don't
people
give me that.
that
Oof.
Trump is choosing to negotiate with Russia, and increasingly we see Marco Rubio being cut out of these meetings, despite the fact he is Secretary of State. So there's a. I speak to another contact, Professor Scott Lucas, who's and if you haven't listened to him, I'll send you some stuff. He's professor of American and international politics in University College Dublin, my alma mater. And we've become friendly because he is one of the best sources if you want to really understand. He's very good on Ukraine. One of the top people outside Ukraine on Ukraine that I count people like Kasparov and Applebaum in and Bill
Yeah.
Browder. He's right up with these two. But he's also, if you want to really understand what's going on inside the Trump White House, and there are tensions there clearly, and we have to hope that there is sufficient support, and there's got to be pressures with the midterms coming up, and we know that Trump's popularity is plummeting in the polls.
Oh,
despite what
after
you will
this
tell
weekend,
us.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I think
We
it's
know his
plummeted.
popularity is plummeting in the polls, and we know, and I'll go back to remind, we know from recent polls that support among the American public for Ukraine is very, very strong. And I believe the last polls that I've seen, support is even stronger among
Mm,
Republican voters than Democrats. So this has got to be something, this has got to be something which is hopefully restraining Trump. But I'm afraid in Europe and Ukraine, we have to be preparing. We have to be preparing for the worst. I spoke to a close Ukrainian friend who's a ambassador in one of the European cities, and I said, "Look, what's the key message you want us to be getting out?" And what was important to him was the kind of the importance of partnering with Ukrainian companies for drone production and missile production and everything else, and really realizing how much the West learn from what Ukraine has hard learned over the last 4 years, and
yeah.
we're seeing the results of this in their drone production and in their long range
Underwater drone
missile
production, oh
production.
boy. We hit a
Well, absolutely
class
amazing.
submarine last
Absolutely,
week.
absolutely, absolutely amazing. So,
If we'd have had six more of those, we could have probably hit all the boats in the harbor too. It's like unbelievable. This is what I wanted to allude to is that, we are hitting these ships, the Shadow Fleet subs, boats, only to the point where they've lost dominance to the Black Sea. So it's absolutely.
look, at this point, we just sum up with, I think, two or three key messages, and you'll go on and
Oh, I
say
did want to
more
talk to
about
you
them.
about one thing before we sum up. Because you
Well,
might
I'm
want
not
to include
summing up.
this
I
in.
don't mean sum up to end, but no, go ahead.
Well, we've been going an hour, so we're gonna have to knock it on the head at some point.
Good.
Well, when Witkoff and Kushner went to Moscow in their recent trip, there was one other attendee. Chinese were there also. No one from the State Department in America, just
Mm,
businessmen talking. Hear a lot of rumors now that America's going into Venezuela. Eventually, they were
mm.
pushing. You've got China and Taiwan, and you've got now Putin looking at another offensive in Ukraine and probably a spring offensive, which I've so that's a given. That's gonna happen anyway. So a lot of rumors going around that these three struck a deal. If you go into Taiwan, we'll go into Venezuela. You can keep going into Ukraine. We're not going to interfere in any of that. What's your take on it?
My take on it is that the Trump administration sees Russia as a massive business opportunity to make a lot of money for both countries, in fairness. And Ukraine, in particular, and Europe in general, is an impediment in the way. And I think the proof points of that are in what we are seeing before our eyes and hearing with our ears. The proof points of that. And if anybody is interested, I would commend you to Google and read. It's on the State Department website. I think it's the State Department website. Maybe it's the White House website. But America's national security strategy for 2025. There's only about it's only about 37 pages, maybe 39. There's only about 2 pages actually dedicated to Europe. They're down towards the end of it. Go and look them up and read what it's saying about Europe. And remember, when it says patriotic parties, read far right, and when it says non-European, read non-white, and see how the absolute the absolute naked animosity towards the European Union and European countries in general. Europe united. There's the old thing. Why do 600 million Europeans need 330 million Americans to protect us from 140 million Russians who can't even defeat 40 million Ukrainians? As I said, 4 times the population, 10 times the GDP, and an industrial base that is so much broader, more well developed than Russia's is. But America wants to carve the globe up into great powers. Certainly itself, Russia, China.
Hmm.
At least it wants, the very least it wants with China is non-aggression. It wants China to keep out of the way, and it wants to come to a deal with China. America doesn't want to fight China. Donald Trump wants to make money, and they would have their eyes definitely on India. And we've seen all the evidence in the last 2 years of how Modi behaves towards Trump. And
Even
India is a
today,
market of what, 1.3, 1.3, 1.3 billion people.
even today, he
Yeah,
commented and said he's deeply disturbed about the attacks on Ukraine on Putin's. And I was like, what? It never even fucking happened. There's no
yeah.
proof. Nothing's been shown. It's just a word that Putin told Trump, and now suddenly Modi's getting involved. It's just, it's ludicrous, to be honest. Ludicrous.
Um, yeah, I
Blame
mean,
you.
yeah, I mean, if I was to sum up, then it would be, we need to start preparing for the worst,
I think
because
so, yeah.
we need to start preparing for the worst. America is no longer, as I said a few times, not just a unreliable security partner. America must increasingly be seen as the enemy until, unless this Trump MAGA experiment starts to fall asunder from the inside,
Well,
which
this is
one
good
can
news. They
only
are
hope.
seem to be eating themselves at the moment, which
Yeah,
is good
yeah.
news. So that's good. They seem to be imploding at the moment. Big rifts in MAGA, so that's always a good sign. But yeah, I mean,
You
I
know,
suppose we'll end it on that. We're sitting in
well, can
Dnipro
I
way. Go on, go on, go on. Then.
can I end on one quote from my great friend Alexei Mikheyev, currently
No,
Ukraine's man in Berlin. Alexei said to me in the very early days, and I never forgot it, and I always requote it. He said, "Cormac, it's very simple." He said, if Russia stops fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine." And yeah, it's very, very frustrating and hurtful and depressing, actually, sitting from the lovely comfort of my London home at the moment.
I hope
My
not.
heart goes out. My heart goes out to all of you. But
We're sitting
the one
waiting
thing,
for a Russian attack now, unfortunately.
yeah,
So we're sitting waiting reprisal for the non-drone attack on Putin's residential home, apparently. So we're just sitting waiting for these threats to manifest into something now. So we'll see. But the rhetoric's getting quite repulsive, to be honest. So from the Russian
mm.
side, but we always knew they weren't gonna, like you said, they weren't gonna be entertaining any peace. They want Kiev, and that's where they'll sacrifice millions for it. Putin's not the sort of guy that admits he's got something wrong, so he'll take Russia down to the very bare bones to make a point and die probably doing it.
If he's willing to sacrifice millions of his own people, which clearly he is, and that is
He
clearly the
is,
Russian way. It was the Russian way back to the Second World War. It
yeah.
was the Russian way before before the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1917, which took Russia out of the First World War. Russia has never had any compunction with sacrificing millions of its own people. So if they have no compunction with sacrificing millions of their own people, hundreds of thousands or even millions of Ukrainians mean absolutely nothing to them.
Nothing to him.
Russia
Absolutely.
will only stop when they are stopped. There will never be a diplomatic solution to this war. Please, 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 folks, if you're listening in and you're not already on the same page as myself and Sean, please wake up to that fact.
Good way to end it, mate. Thank you for coming on and chatting again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Are
Yeah,
you there?
Sean, it's
Ah,
yeah, Sean, I'm here. So
froze
sorry,
up.
Sean. It's always my pleasure. It's always my pleasure to catch up with you, and it's always, I don't know if it's a pleasure, but it's always very, very good to
Stay on here, and
discuss.
I will say goodbye to everybody, and then we can have a little chat. 2 seconds. Uh-oh. Oh no. I'll edit this, don't worry. Just trying to work Stop the recording. There we go. I think we stopped. There we go.
How's that?
Yeah, perfect, mate. I mean, it's great. Informal's really good. The first one, they know who you are, so I'll just put your picture
Mm,
up and who you are, and this time
mm.
we can crack in. We got more talked about then, which is great, and we'll get more
And
done
send it to
next
me, and
time.
I'll obviously share. In fact, I said I'd share your other one. I'll share it in the morning now. I won't share it because it gets best traction here. I find if I share it in the morning, and then I'll share this one the following day, probably.
Yeah, I'll put some snippets to things we've talked about in the video
Yeah.
like before, and people can relate to it then. And I'll just edit it tonight and then probably put it out tomorrow.
Is there anything? Is there anything? I is there any latest coming out of Mar-a-Lago in Florida? I don't
Not that
suspect
I've
there is.
seen. No, nothing. It was just saying nothing's been agreed, and I think Zelensky did some Fox stuff, saying that we can't just pull out of these places where Russia's not going to concede anything at
Mm,
all. Um,
mm.
so now Russia's obviously got wind of that, fabricated this attack on a house, now wants to bomb the shit out of Ukraine with. I've said preparing for the worst. I think they'll you do something stupid like a tac nuke. I mean, that's just the next level now. I think they've done all they can
That they'll
do.
do what?
Use a tac nuke or something. Hopefully
You
not.
think
But
so?
well, I think they've got no wiggle room. What are they going to do? Throw in another 600 drones or another lot of ballistics they've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. I mean,
Here's the interesting thing. I'll
where can
dig
they
out a
go with
couple.
escalation?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Look,
next thing.
the interesting thing to me is, um, you know, Rubio has opposed Trump on a number of occasions. Why has Trump not just got rid of him? He hasn't. He doesn't. I don't think the interesting thing to me is what the internal conflict is and just how far Trump feels he can go. Clearly, he would like to just give Russia everything they want, pull all support back from Ukraine. I still don't know that he won't. Well,
Yeah,
stop. I mean, he stopped giving weapons. He could stop selling weapons, which would be a problem. He could stop providing military intelligence, which, as you know, would be a major problem. Doesn't make any difference. Ukraine has no choice. And at least, and we could have talked about the 90 billion and again the failure of the Europeans to actually seize and hand over the 210 billion or 140 billion or whatever it was, but at least they have that 90 billion, which from my knowledge enables them to continue the fight well into 2027.
yeah,
So it's buying them time if they can keep the flow of weapons going in.
yeah,
But yeah, what my friend Alexei was saying was, he said, you need to realize, he said, you can give us 100 Leopard tanks, or you can simply, invest all your investment into Ukrainian munitions factories and drones factories and so forth. Look at this
yeah,
flag behind me.
yeah, yeah,
Told the
yeah.
story about that. I bought it a year ago.
Cool,
I bid for it at an auction. It cost me £1,000, which basically I was told was 3 kamikaze drones.
Yeah, yeah,
One of those drones can take out a T-70
yeah.
if it hits in the right place. Oh,
Absolutely, yeah.
clear a trench, or even,
Certainly
or even
mobilize
knock,
it.
yeah, or even knock a Russian soldier off a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was you posted that, but it's. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely it can. It's yeah, absolutely it can. It's the problem. The problem is now that you've got drones. There's a 20 kilometer kill zone and drones that take out people, not just big bits of equipment or artillery
yeah.
pieces now. Now you've got drone swarms and it's just gonna get look at what China's doing with their demos and their shit there. That's a weapons demo, not a display. That's
Mm.
fucking that's we're on to some new level shit.
Actually, do you know what we didn't do? We didn't do enough of, and maybe it was my fault for going off on streams of consciousness, but I really think that piece that you put out that you sent to me yesterday, that really is important. That contains such an important message to get across to people. And there's a friend of mine, it reminds me of what, Philip Ingram.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what, Philip says about when you're judging whether you're winning or losing, he said it's not just about tactically what's happening on the battlefield. He said it's what's happening behind the battlefield and on the
It
logistics
is.
chain. And Ukraine
Yeah,
has
yeah,
so much up the ante there. That's holding the feet of the Russian people to the fire. That's
yeah, yeah,
putting. Now we can speculate. We're always waiting for the economy to collapse. It's probably
yeah.
not going to collapse any day soon. But when does Putin finally run out of rope with the Russian people?
It's gonna, yeah, and that's the bit I'm trying to push
all
to. It's
all of the
4 years.
all of the disinformation now is towards saying we're winning, we're winning, we're winning, and Trump is
Yeah,
telling him he's winning, and
and it's
lots of
deflection.
useful idiots, lots of
Yeah, it's
useful
real
idiots across
deflection,
the West are telling him that they are winning.
and
That's
they're
the
not.
narrative we need to try and change.
It is.
That's
I mean, we're not winning on
but
X, but certainly we're cutting through the media space. I think better than we were. It's just they in the last 6 months they've just gone nuts. The Russians with propaganda. They're pushing that out big time, spending a lot of
yeah,
money on it,
yeah,
a lot of money. But that money's going to run out soon. You know,
yeah.
it's going to run out. He's arresting his own people, oligarchs. He's stealing their money. He's getting all the crap guys so he can steal their money. They're using that to fund the war effort. Whether China are bailing out, I don't know. Probably to a degree. But China, I mean, if that's the case, then China's in a win-win. They've got disputed territories with Russia. They don't pay out. They're just going to go into Russia and take the rest of it. I mean, this is long term. This is probably
Mm,
fucking Russia up. Putin's fucking Russia up long term. And I know,
mm,
talking to intelligence friends, that even the Russians concerned about the Chinese influence inside Russia. So
mm.
even they're concerned that they're losing their grip. So how much pressure that's putting on Putin, I don't know, but I think more so now than ever. And we still speak to people the other side, and gauge what's going on, and we know that how expensive it is over there and what's going on in the occupied territories. It's just getting that out.
Mm.
So that yesterday's episode was the first time we broke 1,000 views, and we got that in 24 hours.
This is
So
the
it's
piece you sent to me.
bizarre. Yeah.
This is the piece you sent to me. I
I've been
really thought it was. Yeah,
struggling for months to try and get some traction. And then last night we had 1,000 views in 14 hours. And then suddenly it's just on my Instagram. Get this. I put a post out of the attacks at the weekend, 2.2 million views.
good.
I was like, where did that come from? So we
Mm.
are resonating, we are getting out there, and we are just starting to push that message across. So by the time I go to American Spring, hopefully we'll have some good videos and good traction. By the
Think they'll
time,
let you in?
yeah,
Will they let you in?
I don't know, to be honest. They give me a visa, but I'm half expected to
Oh,
get there and they'll just go, sorry, Sean, but you just called our president the dumbest in the world. So I don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
I'm 50 fit, but if I don't, mate, it's going straight on my YouTube.
good.
It's going straight on my YouTube. I'll wear a body
Look,
cam if I have to.
yeah. Listen, it's great to catch up as usual.
And you, mate, say it's
I
to
wish you
Seamus
a
for me. Do you have a good
will.
Christmas?
Yeah, we had very quiet. Oh, Christmas was great actually. We had quiet. We just had two of our best friends, another couple, joined us for Christmas Day. The only problem is the fuckers are vegan, so I had to. I promised
Oh
them.
my God.
I promised them a vegan Wellington, and I went around London for 3 weeks, and everywhere I went to, vegan Wellingtons were sold out. This is a really fun. So I eventually,
Mate.
2 days before Christmas, I sat in a fucking supermarket car park, having driven fucking halfway across London because I was told that they were in stock and they weren't.
I couldn't
Sat,
imagine a worse Christmas to be. Vegan.
sat,
Fuck.
I sat. No, hang on, wait a moment. I sat in and I looked up recipes and I worked out how I was going to make it, and they absolutely fucking loved it. I mean, it was a work of art. But anyway, at the same time, Seamus decides he wants the full turkey and ham. So I'm cooking for four people. I'm cooking turkey, vegan Wellington, and fucking nut roast.
Brilliant.
And we all
Brilliant.
got pissed and played karaoke. So it was good fun. It was good fun.
That's
We had
good.
a
I
nice
like a
time.
bit of karaoke myself, to be fair.
But now I've just got to, I finally have to. get the weight down and kind of look after my health. I'm not feeling on top shape at the moment. So I think I'm getting a little voice in my ear says, right, cut the drink out for a while and lose the
Yeah, I
weight
keep
and
getting that
get
voice, and I
yourself
go,
back.
fuck off.
Yeah, well, I was 10 years ago, Sean. I was saying that, but I can't anymore. I'm 63
Yeah,
next month, believe it or not. But apart from that, we're in great fun. I've no complaints. Nice quiet Christmas, basically. And not doing anything for New Year's is kind of. But we got two dogs in the house at the moment because in fact, the same friends went away for Christmas, so we're look after each other's dogs when we go away.
nice.
So I'm kind of it's pull the drawbridge up time,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I'm
I'll
doing
keep
that
plugging
today
away
and
at this.
tomorrow.
I'll keep plugging away at this and doing what I can. But
I'm not
listen,
moving till the 2nd of Jan now. That's it.
listen, buddy. All the best to you and
All the
yours.
best. See you later,
Take
mate.
care.
Take it
Lovely to see
easy.
you.
And you, mate. Bye bye.